Here, good morning, everyone. Here, let's give charity today, and charity brings all good things, and it stops all bad things. So Mashiach should come now and alleviate all the troubles of the Jewish people. It should protect us from all of our enemies. We shouldn't have any enemies, and they shall all transform to be friends. And it should be only a good world. Charity. This week's now we're going to learn something very interesting. There are four special haftorahs that we read to prepare us for Passover, before Passover. Two of them are before Purim, and two of them are before Passover. So what's a haftorah? Haftorah is that after we finish reading the regular reading in the Torah, and every week there's 53 different Torah portions, and every week we read another one. As sometimes they're joined together, sometimes they're not. After every reading, regular Torah reading, we always read something from what's called the Haftorah, which usually comes from the prophets, but not always. Sometimes it comes from the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel. But sometimes it also comes from the writings, like once in a while it comes from the Chronicles and from Kings, even from the Judges. Okay, but it's a special one. It's a special one. Usually it deals with the Torah portion of the week directly. Excuse me, something similar to the Torah portion of the week. But there are 4 weeks. There are several actually, but there are 4 weeks which all of them precede. 2 of them precede Purim, and 2 of them precede Passover, which aren't directly connected. They don't have the same topic or even a similar topic of the Torah portion of the week, but they're talking about the time of the year when they're read. So it goes in an order like this. There's what's called shkalim, which shkalim is talking about how at the beginning of the month of Adar, the Jewish people gave a half of a shekel to the temple. Then after that, there's a Zohar, Parsha Zohar, which talks about how we destroyed Amalek, because that's right before Purim, when we destroyed Amalek. And then there's Parshat Para, that we read last week. That talks about purifying the Jewish people. Purifying, Para Aduma, the red cow. Purify the Jewish people. And then Parshat Chodesh, which we read this week, which talks about the first commandment that all the Jewish people were given as a Jewish people, and that is to sanctify the month. So 2 special Torah readings that we have, which prepare us for Purim, and 2 which prepare us for Passover. Okay. And so the Rebbe wants to say that this is not just a custom of the Jewish people to remind us of certain things, but it's also a preparation right now for something that we have to do right now. We're going to see what it is. There's Seder. Yeah, 1 minute. Oh, here we go. There it goes. There's Seder, the order from the Dalet Parshot of the 4 Torah portions that we read. Vos men length, which we read before Passover, is Shkalim, Zohar. Like I said, before Purim, we read Shkalim and Zohar. And Purim, of course, is 1 month before Passover. So we read Shkalim and Zohar, Para, and HaChodesh. And each one of these Haftorah portions that we read, we also read a little section of the Torah, which is sort of relevant to them. So in Parshas Shkalim, we read about the commandment in the Torah. In Parshas Kitisa, to take half of a shekel. And then Zohar, we read the portion of the Torah which talks about destroying Amalek. And in Parshas Para, we read for Parshat Chukat. That was last week about the red cow. And Parshat Chodesh we read this week, which is found in Parshat Bo, which God tells Moses about the commandment to sanctify the moon, sanctify the month. Okay, so just short again. There are four Torah portions which precede Passover. Two of them are before Purim, and two of them are before Passover. So let's explain what this means to me and you, what we're supposed to do. But partly in detail, Zayin and the Tzvei Tzivui, the Tzvei portions, the two Torah portions, which are Shkalim and Zocher, they are connected with the redemption of Purim. What happened in Purim? Purim was like 2,500 years ago when Haman wanted to destroy all the Jews. And he convinced the king to activate all the people. The whole world was against the Jews, and we got saved. That's the holiday of Purim. Was is noch nit kein Geula Shlema. The Jewish people were saved from Achashverosh, but it was only temporary. It was an amazing miracle. They were saved from Haman. And also Achashverosh was on his side. Achashverosh is the king of the whole world. We were saved, but it was only temporary. Because true, we got saved physically, but anti-Semitism, anti-hating Jew hatred didn't go away. Like it says, we are still servants of Achashverosh. After we're still in exile, we're still scattered around. We don't have a temple. It happened. The miracle of Purim happened between the first and the second temple. So there wasn't a temple. And right now we don't have a temple. So pretty much nothing changed. So truly we were saved, but it was only a temporary salvation. So the first two, which is Shkalim and Zocher, are talking about a preparation for counting every Jew, that every Jew is important, and with destroying Amalek, which is also important, but it wasn't complete. It wasn't complete. It was just a temporary, like a little taste of what the future redemption is going to be. Like it says, we're still servants of Achashverosh. That's one of the reasons why we don't say Hallel on Purim. When the Parshas Para and a Chodesh and the Torah portions, which are Para, which we read last week, talking about the red heifer that they brought to purify people that were impure, and a Chodesh, which we read this Torah this week, which talks about the first commandment given to all the Jews of sanctifying the month. This is connected with the redemption of Passover. Vos is a Geula Shlema, which that is a total redemption. We left Egypt, we didn't go back to Egypt. True, we're still in exile, but what was accomplished when we left Egypt was permanent. We permanently left that country and that mindset, which was called total servitude. But in general, Zayin and Oich, the Parshas, also the Torah portions of Shkalim and Zocher, they are relevant also to Passover. Why? Because the redemption that happened, the miracle that happened in Purim, this was connected to the redemption of Passover, like it is so Geula the Geula. When there's a year, sometimes there's a year when there's two udders, sometimes there's an extra month, two udders. So they have a question: if there's two udders, well, when should we make Passover? When should we make Purim? Should we make Purim in the first Adar, or should we make Purim in the second Adar? So logic would have it that we make it in the first Adar because that's the real Adar, and the second Adar is just added on to make 13 months, so that the moon will correspond, the months will correspond with the seasons of the year. So they add an extra month. So the second Adar, that's just additional. So maybe we should make Purim in the first Adar. So the law is we don't. We make Purim in the second Adar. Why? Because we want the redemption of Purim, the miracle that happened in Purim, to be close to the miracle and the redemption of Passover. So therefore, all four are really a preparation for Passover. Even the preparation for Purim, Parshat Shkalim and Parshat Zocher, the counting of the Jews and the destruction of Amalek, is only a preparation for Passover as well. Now, here we see something very interesting. First of all, let's just get into this. The Jewish people depend on miracles. The Jewish people depend on miracles from God. The very existence of the Jewish people is not only tied up with God, it totally depends on God. If it wouldn't have been for the miracles of Purim, Haman would have wiped us out totally. There was no logical reason why he didn't. Everybody's mindset was to destroy the Jews in one day and it would just be over. That's it. Suddenly there was a big miracle that didn't happen. And the same thing is with Passover. With Passover, that's the birth of the Jews. The Jews started off in slavery. The Jewish nation was born in slavery. They didn't do anything to deserve it. That's just how it began. The Jewish people were 210 years in servitude. It was sometimes it was hard, difficult servitude. It was easy servitude. At first, it wasn't that hard, and then the last 19 years, it was. But nevertheless, they were slaves. They were. And if it wasn't for God taking us out, there was no way we would have gotten out. So the very existence of the Jewish people, which that's been going on since Abraham, but the Jewish people is since we left Egypt, it depends totally on God. So God is not just a take it or leave it the aspect of religious Jews. And then there's non-religious Jews that don't have any connection with God. There's no such thing. Every Jew, the fact that you're a Jew means you have an essential connection with God because God took the Jewish people out of Egypt and he gave them the Torah. Okay, let's go. So in other words, we're talking about here God, which God is not like a person and he's not an angel. God is the creator of all beings. So he's creating you and me. And the Jewish people have an essential, existential connection with the creator of the universe. And it seems that he's doing these particular things for the Jews. And we celebrate that. Let's go. Parshat Shkalim, the Torah portion, which is called Shkalim, length men we read before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Why? Because in the first day of Adar, they announced, when there was a holy temple, they would announce that everybody had to give a half of a shekel. Was meant darf tzulib, the korbanos, which they have to have these half a shekel, this money for the sacrifices for the whole new year. Right? In the time of the temple, they would go around, everyone had to give of a half of a shekel, and this half a shekel would be used for the communal sacrifices in the temple for the whole year. That's Parshat Shkalim. This is before Purim. Parshat Zachor, we also read before Purim because Purim is the time when Haman was defeated. Vas'er is Mizar, which he came from the seed of Amalek. Amalek lent men Zachor, so we read Zachor, the Parshat Zachor, that we should remember what Amalek tried to do. We read this before Purim in order to fulfill what it says, Nizkarim v'Naasim, that these days of Purim are remembered and they are actual now. Nizkarim, we mention them and we remember them before they are done. And as we remember what Haman did to us and tried to do, and then we celebrate Purim. Parshat Zachor is remembering, and Purim is the doing. That wouldn't actually happen. The reason why we read Shkalim before Zachor is not only because of the time when it happened. That Parshat Shkalim is connected with the first day of Adar. That's when they gave the half a shekels. And Parshat Zachor is with Purim, which is on the 14th day of Adar. That's one reason, but there's also another. The topic of it, the content. The Gemara says, in the merit of the fact that the Jews gave the half of a shekel, because of that, Haman was destroyed. Charity. Because the Jews gave charity, in this case it was charity to the holy temple so that there could be sacrifices for all of the Jewish people, which means basically for the whole entire world, but everybody had to give to everyone. Was erhat gesagt, aseret alofim kikar kesef eshkol, which Haman said, I will give 10,000 shekels. He said to Achashverosh, I have 10,000 shekels I'll give, Just let me kill the Jewish people. And Haman and Achashverosh said, you know what? Kill them, take the money. I don't need the money. Just kill the Jews. All of a sudden, Achashverosh flipped around. Says, what defeated the 10,000 shekels that Haman said he would give to destroy the Jews? The half a shekels that all the Jewish people gave. From this, it's understood the sheikhus, the connection between the two Torah portions, and also the reason why shkalim comes before zachor, namely what? That the Jewish people first of all gave the charity, and that's what caused the destruction of Amalek and zachor. Thus was hidden the fact that the Jewish people preceded by giving this charity, hat gebrach. This is what brought the miracle from Purim. Was hoibt sich an, which begins by remembering what happened, by remembering about Zohar of about Amalek. Okay, even v'nachta gevura, but after the redemption of Purim, was is wie gesagt, like we said before, noch nit kein gula. It was not a total redemption because we're still in exile. As compliment, and there still is also Jew hatred, as compliment to the geula that comes from the redemption of Passover. Was this a geula shlema, which Passover signifies a total redemption. All the Jewish people that got out of Egypt, they didn't go back to Egypt, and they never went back again. So we've left that stage of exile, which was called Egypt. We've left that. So it was a total redemption. And it's a preparation for, and the preparation for that, for the total redemption, is Parshat Para and Parshat HaChodesh. So again, the Jewish people depend on God. That the situation that we're in now in the world, it can't be solved by political means or by logical means or by some sort of oratory means or by writing and explaining to the United Nations how big a mistake they're making. It's not going to work. It's not going. You could do those things, but you have to understand that the only salvation is going to come from God. That's what the Jewish people are. What can you do? That was the miracle of Purim. That's the miracle of Passover. So the redemption that came by God in Purim, it was only temporary. We went back basically to the same situation we were, the same mental state and the same political state and the same whatever that we were in Purim, in the time of Purim. We went back to it. And in Passover, though, not so. In Passover, we went out. But on the other hand, we're going to see. Benogea that Tzvei Parshas, regarding these two Torah portions, it says in Yerushalmi that Be'emes hat men gadar fleinen. So the two Torah portions that we read before Passover are Parshat Para. We read last week. Parshat Para talks about the red cow and how the red cow would be brought in order to purify the Jewish people, from the impurity of death, which that was to purify the Jewish people so that they could bring the Passover offering. So really, and we read Para first, but the Yerushalmi says that really it shouldn't be that order. We should read the Chodesh. It should be first. Why? Because Parshat HaChodesh talks about the beginning of the month of Nisan. This was talking about the first day of Nisan. And when was the para burnt? When did they prepare this red cow to purify people from the impurity of death? This was on the second day of Nisan. That's when they started preparing it. Well, be'echad b'Nisan, because the first day of the Nisan, when that was the first day that the tabernacle was opened up, and the burning of the first red cow, this was only be done when the tabernacle was there. So this was done on the second day of Nisan. Because the burning of the para could only be done after, it could not be done before the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was set up. So therefore, technically, we should read the Parsha of the Chodesh, of the sanctifying of the month. That should be first. Nor but to leave them is Parsha's Para, because Parsha is talking about purifying all the Jewish people. So therefore, we read Para first. We read Para first, because nowadays we're talking about the Jewish people have to be purified. Moshiach is going to come and purify the Jewish people, and then there can be the going to the Holy Temple and etc. And going out of Egypt. Darfman verstehen, we have to understand this answer of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that really we should read Parshat Chodesh first, because that talks about the first day of Nisan, and then we should read about Para, because that was done on the second day of Nisan. But it says no, because we have to purify the Jewish people, so therefore we read Para first. Says, what type of an answer is that? In Plug Vasfar Ashaychas, what is the connection of the purification of the Jewish people with Parshat Chodesh? As Andrish can nit sein their Indian from Parshat Chodesh, that you have to read Parshat Para first in order to read Parshat Chodesh. Why? In fact, the Holy Temple, the tabernacle, was opened up on the first day of Nisan. That's relevant to Parshat Chodesh that we read about the commandment to sanctify the month. And then after that, chronologically, was the red cow. Nor, but, what's it got to do with refining the Jewish people? Says the Rebbe, it's not called Torah's Parshas Pesach, it's called Parshat Chodesh. Parshat Chodesh is not talking about actual Passover, it's talking about the first day of the month. The first commandment the Jewish people were given was to sanctify the months. The first month they sanctified was the month of Nisan. So the first day of Nisan, that's the Chodesh, and then afterwards they could make the Para. Their din is from Kiddush HaChodesh, Rosh Chodesh, is Vosas Nogea. What does it mean that you have to purify the Jews in order to sanctify the month? It's not so. You can sanctify the month first, and then so says the Rebbe, obviously, this is not talking about just the past redemption of Purim. The declaring in them is the message is their Inyan from Rosh Chodesh, the whole idea of the beginning of the month. This is talking about the new moon. Nachtam afterwards, vide Lavana, after the moon was concealed. As Vert Z, it will be, the moon will be revealed. It will be born anew. Thus is oich. This is also hinted at as the fact that the Jews are compared to the moon. So it's not just talking about the commandment of sanctifying the month, it's talking about the commandment of renewing the Jewish people. As nachta Allah halamos, that after all the concealments from the time of exile, Veren Zenola, that the Jewish people, they'll be born anew. Was thus is their inyan geula. That's the whole idea of the redemption. What's the idea of redemption? We're waiting for Moshiach to come. Maimonides says it clearly. To activate the Jewish people. To activate the Jewish people. Make a play on words. You could say rejuvenate the Jewish people. Make them Jews. Suddenly the Jewish people become alive and awake and aware of what it means to be a Jew. It's not just something that our grandparents were, and it's something we read about nostalgically and about books and how we've suffered and how we're there, etc. And now we have our own land, and that's not what a Jew is. A Jew is a messenger of God, every Jew. There's a man from Eschalas Agula, and that's the idea of the renewing of the moon. Despite all the darkness and the lack of identity the Jewish people have, as when the new moon, that's Geula, when it's redeemed. And that's what these two Torah portions are talking about, this para bringing the red cow and the then the Jewish people can be renewed. That's Parshat Chodesh. There's a man, the time for the beginning of the redemption was the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, was the first day of Nisan. Why? Even though we went out of Passover 15 days later, but the real beginning of the redemption was the first day of Nisan. Vos oif them. When on that it says, "Chodesh zelachem Rosh Chodeshim." That's when God told Moses in Egypt that this month will be the first of the month. First month will be the first of the months of the year. In Judaism, the first day of the year is Rosh Hashanah, but the first month of the year is 6 months later, and Nisan. Darshan the Gezerah Shabbat. Why? Because we learn from a similarity between words in the Torah. It says Chodesh Hazeh, what says by Parshat Chodesh, and it says by Yom Hazeh, what it says by the giving of the Torah. By Yom Hazeh Bo Midbar Sinai, on this day, which is the day that the Jewish people went into the desert of Sinai, was the first day of the month. Matan Torah, the day that the Torah was given, was the first day of the month, and it says Ayom Hazeh, and it also says the Chodesh Hazeh, so it's talking about the first day of the month. When the Jews got out of Egypt, was only in order to receive the Torah. The giving of the Torah was the idea of the redemption, like the rabbis say, Al tikre cherut, El charut, elo cherut. Don't say that the letters were carved, charut, on the tablets, but cherut, it set us free. Cherut means we are free from our own selfish devices and from the angel of death and from being subservient to the other nations. From Denvas to Gomorrah, because the Gomorrah connects this month of the Chodesh with the giving of the Torah, so it's understood as Oich Barosh Chodesh Nisan, the first day of Nisan, which that's the commandment that God gave to Moses in Egypt, which is this month, is showing us already the idea of the future redemption. That was the beginning of the redemption. So the redemption of the Jewish people means that the Jewish people start to feel the godliness inside of them. They start to feel the connection to God. They automatically do Torah and commandments. Automatically. It's the essential part of what a Jew is. Like a normal person automatically wants to eat, wants to breathe. The Jewish people automatically want to do the Torah and the commandments. Automatically. And they want to do it because God wants them to. They feel it. They don't care what happens to themselves. That's the beginning of the redemption. That's what's called the new moon, the new month, a renewal of the Jewish people. Anoint them according to this, Vetman verstehen. Now we can understand why it is that, first of all, we read the Parshas Para, which talks about the purification of the Jewish people, before we read about the new month. Why? Because Parshat Chodesh is talking about giving the birth of the moon, namely the beginning of the redemption. As Darfman to them, we have to therefore be refined and purified. Just like it is necessary for us to be purified before the future redemption. How we get purified? What does it mean to be purified? Like it says, Zarachti aleichem mayim tahorim, I will throw upon you pure waters. It's a sense in Ezekiel. God says, I will throw upon you pure waters and you will be purified. The rabbis say, Tahora mevi liyadei Eliyahu Navi. It says that the purification that brings to the redemption. And by the way, what does it mean to be refined? Refined basically means that you don't think about yourself. In Judaism, thinking about yourself is impurity. That's why all these other religions that say we're going to bring you into heaven and you're all defiled, and you're going to go to heaven, you're going to go to heaven, you're going to heaven. So it's just all selfishness. It's one big impurity going from one type of impurity to another type of impurity. It's just selfishness. And the whole point of Judaism is to take you out of the selfishness. That's what it says. Elijah the prophet is going to come and throw water on all the Jewish people so they won't be thinking about not this world and not the world to come. They think about only what God wants. And what does God want? That this world should be perfect. That's what God wants. That we should do Torah and commandments here. We should have the holy temple here. That's higher than heaven. That's redemption. Living in God's world, not in our world. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first beginning of Nisan, was the redemption only in the beginning. That was potential. The actual redemption of the Jewish people came 15 days later. That's when the moon was full. And the completion will be the redemption was 50 days later when the Jews got out of Egypt, when the Jews received the Torah. 50 days after the Jews got out of Egypt, they received the Torah. is a zoe vitzu der geula, just like in the future redemption, also will be right, which is going to happen any minute. First of all, there has to be the purification. As Ezekiel said, God promises, I will throw upon you pure water. So also has to be, there has to be a potential, and then there has to be also an actual. Reading the Torah that we read last week and this week, when we talked about the red cow and the redemption, this is giving the power. The Torah gives power. First of all, we read Parshat Para. That's potentially giving us a purification. Was this is Torah B'koach, which this is potential, preparing us for the pure water that God is going to throw on us for the future redemption. And afterwards, we were Parshat Chodesh. That's the beginning of that, that's talking about the potential of that water taking its effect, and the future redemption will come about. When das is their Seder from Torah, that's what it is. First of all, there's to be refinement and then redemption. Parshat Para is talking about potential redemption, to let us know that potential purification, to let us know that there is such a thing as refining the Jewish people. Parshat Chodesh is talking about potentially there is such a thing as the total redemption of the Jewish people. There is such a thing, potentially. That's the, and then afterwards came the actual making of the red cow. That's the second day of Nisan. That's the that's the purification in actuality. They actually made the red cow. And the 15th day of Nisan, when we got out of Egypt, that's, and until Matan Torah, that's the actual redemption. Okay, so what are we talking about? Reading the Torah portion tells us there is such a thing, but it actually happened. Actually, the way that it happened, right, was the actual occurrence of the thing. First of all, we read about the purification of the Jewish people, and then we read about the renewal of the moon. And that's how it was back then. Actually, first of all, the second day of Nisan, they brought the red cow. And on the 15th day of Nisan, they got out of Egypt until the giving of the Torah. What has it got to do with us? We got the Torah 3,339 years ago. That's a long time. We got out of Egypt also 40 days before that. What's it teaching us? Obviously, the teaching for us is like this. We have to take the teaching. Azoivi, just like there is the true purification, can only be when the Mashiach comes. Was demel, which then Vet Zayin will be at Ruach HaTuma, I will pass the spirit of impurity from the world. Varum, because in the arrival of the Mashiach, Vet Noch Zayin der Ruach HaTuma, because when Mashiach comes, there will still be impurity. People will still be egotists. The estate, like it says in the Rambam, the Mashiach will come and force or convince all the Jewish people. So one of the things that Mashiach is going to do is Mashiach is going to bring Mashiach. Mashiach will refine the Jewish people. That's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe is doing now. Lubavitcher Rebbe is educating. He says Chabad houses all over, and he's educating the Jewish people what Judaism really is. Judaism is the commandments. Judaism is Torah, mitzvahs. You want to live in the land of Israel, that's wonderful. But only Mashiach is going to bring all the Jews to the land of Israel, because the land of Israel depends on, first of all, the Jews becoming refined, purified, doing Torah and commandments. Therefore, Mashiach will force or convince, he'll force them by logic, as they zollen, that they should learn Torah and they should do the commandments. Vibalt, because Zok der Lashon Yikov, it says that he will force them. This is a proof, as the Jewish people won't want to do it with their own will. Mashiach somehow or other will have to convince them to do it. While Esvet, because it will be Noch demelt, even then, the Ruach HaTumah, Mashiach will come, there'll still be the spirit of egotism will prevail in the whole world. And Mashiach's service, the job of Mashiach will be Mavir et Ruach HaTumah min ha'oretz, to educate everyone, to educate the Jews what a Jew really is. Torah and commandments, that's Jewish identity. Again, we have to remember that the identity and the very existence of the Jewish people depends solely on God. God is not just an option. It's not just that's religious Judaism, and then there's normal Judaism, there's natural Judaism, there's Zionistic Judaism, there's intellectual Judaism, there's what is this, the sentimental Judaism, there's that, right? You're a Jew in name, you're a Jew in what the food you eat. They used to have this thing called you're a gastronomic Jew, you eat Jewish food. Some people say you're just a what is it called? I'm a good Jew in my heart. How do they call it? A aortic Jew or something. I don't know. I'm a good Jew in my heart. I'm a good Jew in this. I enjoy Jewish music. I do. It says those things are very nice, but that's not Judaism. That's not Judaism. Those are maybe some outside signs of Judaism, but the main thing of Judaism is the Torah and the commandments. People don't know what that is, what the connection between them. As Mashiach is going to show how real that Torah and the commandments are. That in a way, Torah and the commandments are more real than the world is. Ken a person might think, as Itzter, that now darf man gor nit tan und verlassen sich in ganzen auf Mashiach, that we shouldn't do anything. The Mashiach is going to do everything. If them is a hora, therefore it says in Tarshish Para, it says in order to come to the purification, if Mashiach is going to bring everybody back to Judaism, so let him do it all. What do I have to drive myself crazy for? It says no, it's not so. We have to do it. Because in order to come to the purification and the redemption, actual and complete, darf men, we must, you have to have a preparation. You have to have the refinement and the purification as much as you can purify yourself. You have to refine yourself from the ultimate impurity. What's the ultimate avot impurity? The father of father, what I say, the essence of impurity. Like the rabbis say, kol osik b'Torah chatas, if you learn the laws of the red cow, it's as though you sacrificed a red cow. Chatas kori rachmana. The Torah calls it a Torah chatat. What does it mean? The power of the red cow, b'meile vert men pater from the avos v'toldos atuma. If you learn Torah and you even a little bit, you learn Torah and said a little bit of Torah, all of a sudden you start to feel that the God who took us out of Egypt and the God who saved us in Purim is the same God who gave the Torah, and the same godliness which was revealed when God gave the Torah is revealed in the Torah right now. Now it's true, we have to really believe and we have to think about it. But the fact of the matter is it is true. Und das wird bringen, and this will bring the purification and the future redemption in the Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu B'mei Rabbi Yameinu. Amen. So let's just summarize what we just finished learning over here, right? It's very, very powerful. What the Rebbe is trying to say, again, is the Jewish people are intrinsically connected and their very existence depends on God, but not just God does everything. We have to do what God says. That's why God put us in the world. And that connects us to the creator of the universe and improves the creation. But in order to do that is we have to purify ourselves and go out of Egypt and receive the Torah. Because God is not, like we said, take it or leave it. God is the whole health and the blessing and the reality of the world is God. And we can reveal it. We can make this world real. We can make this world blessed. We can make the world healthy, but it depends on the Jewish people. The Jewish people have to go out of themselves. That's called the redemption. And that can only happen by Mashiach. And that's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He's encouraging all the Jewish people to start revealing who you really are, to wake up like the new moon. And that depends on purifying yourself. And how do you purify yourself? By learning Torah and doing the commandments. And little by little, you start to feel the godliness in the Torah and the commandments. And then that's how God starts to take us out of Egypt. God does the rest. Mashiach now.